Russia's elite paratroopers are pinned down in a rain-soaked settlement in Zaporizhzhia, surrounded, outnumbered, and running out of options. They were sent to win a propaganda war. Instead, they walked into a killing ground that Ukraine had already prepared for them, and by the time the sun came up, Putin's showcase operation had turned into a showcase of everything wrong with Russia's military strategy in 2026. Here's the thing. Russia's airborne forces aren't supposed to end up like this. These are paratroopers, trained extensively, equipped properly, sent into Stepnohirsk with a specific mission that their commanders believed was achievable. The plan wasn't complicated. Infiltrate the contested settlement under cover of darkness, raise the Russian flag, photograph it, and hand Putin the propaganda image he desperately needed. Simple, clean, deniable. Except Ukraine already knew they were coming. The doctrine says elite units succeed where conventional forces fail. Russia's airborne forces have the training, the equipment, and the institutional knowledge to run exactly this kind of operation. Reports indicate these soldiers did everything right by the Special Forces playbook. They waited for nightfall. They equipped themselves with anti-thermal camouflage to mask heat signatures. They timed the operation for a rainy night, adding another layer of concealment and potentially degrading Ukraine's drone effectiveness. By every measure of preparation, these soldiers performed exactly as trained, and Ukraine watched every step of it. Ukraine's Artan Special Forces unit had the Russian infiltrators tracked before they ever reached their objective. Now watch what happens when you send elite soldiers into a position held by a force that already knows you're there, knows your route, and has decided exactly where to let you walk before closing the trap. Artan's forces allowed the Russian units to move forward, then surrounded them. The offer came first: surrender, survive, end the war for yourselves right here. Russia's soldiers refused. I want you to sit with that for a second. These were trained professionals who understood tactically that they were surrounded. They refused surrender anyway. That's not bravado. That's what happens when years of indoctrination have convinced soldiers that death in service to the Kremlin is preferable to capture. Russia has criminalized voluntary surrender, with soldiers now reportedly facing up to 10 years in prison for giving themselves up. But for Russia's elite, the calculus runs deeper than fear of the Gulag. These soldiers had been shaped to believe the mission mattered more than their survival. So they opened fire, and Artan's response was absolute. Ukraine's clearing operation of Stepnohirsk was documented in detail. Footage shows armored vehicles and tanks rolling into the settlement, absorbing hits from Russian heavy weapons and continuing forward. Artan divided into small assault elements, moving house to house. Scouts forward, assault teams following, dismantling the Russian units piece by piece. The Artan commander, Viktor Torkotyuk, said his forces had lured the Russian paratroopers into what he called a fire pocket, and that the so-called elite of the Russian army proved wholly unprepared for the systematic defense HUR had constructed. Reports from HUR indicate Russia's infiltrators followed over 1.4 million Russian casualties into the ledger of this war. Is that an extraordinary outcome for Ukraine? Absolutely. Does it happen by accident? No. That's intelligence. That's preparation. That's a force that was waiting, not reacting. Here's what you're probably not hearing in the broader coverage of this engagement. The Stepnohirsk operation wasn't a one-off improvisation by Russia. It was at least the second attempt in a single month to stage a fake flag raising in Zaporizhzhia. On June 29th, reports indicate Russia's 38th Separate Guards Motor Rifle Brigade attempted the same tactic in Novoselivka, another village in the region. That operation also failed. Ukraine's drones and infantry response led to the flag bearers being captured. 2 attempts, 1 month, same approach, both failures. That pattern tells you more about Russia's strategic desperation than any single engagement can. And it goes back further. December 2025 saw Russian soldiers attempt an identical flag raising in Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region. Ukraine's 57th Separate Motorized Infantry Brigade shut it down. That same month, Russia publicly claimed it had taken the city of Kupiansk. President Zelensky traveled to Kupiansk personally and photographed himself there to prove the claim false. A Ukrainian counterattack then pushed the occupiers out entirely. Time after time, the pattern repeats. Russia fabricates the narrative. Ukraine exposes it. Russia tries again. Stepnohirsk is strategically significant beyond what the propaganda angle suggests. The settlement sits approximately 30 kilometers south of Zaporizhzhia city. Holding it would give Russia a staging point for further advances toward a regional capital that Putin has formally claimed as Russian territory. Reports indicate it also offers partial control over the north-south E-105 highway, which carries logistics value, and supports a broader Russian push along the eastern bank of the Dnipro toward Primorsk, with the strategic aim of bringing Zaporizhzhia into Russian artillery range. Ukraine had retaken full control of Stepnohirsk on May 18, with the Artan unit heavily involved in that liberation operation as well. Putin's late May infiltration attempt was a direct response to that loss. The broader consequence here isn't just territorial. Putin is publicly acknowledging things he never used to acknowledge. In a late June interview on Russian state television, Putin admitted that Ukrainian drone strikes on Russian infrastructure are creating, in his words, problems, and he acknowledged a fuel shortage resulting from those strikes. Weeks earlier, he admitted Russian forces aren't advancing as fast as he wants. These are not statements a leader makes when his information environment is under control. These are statements a leader makes when the reality has become too visible to his own population to deny entirely. Putin needed Stepnohirsk to be a win. He needed the flag photograph to feed back into the propaganda architecture that keeps Russian soldiers believing the war is just, that Russia is advancing, and that sacrifice is meaningful. A study of over 1,000 Russian POWs, analyzed by the Ukrainian NGO Lingvaleksa alongside Ukraine's Office of the Prosecutor General, found that soldiers who endorsed Russian state propaganda were 6 times more likely to believe the war was legitimate and twice as likely to want to return to combat. The propaganda isn't just a political tool, it's a force multiplier. It keeps soldiers in the fight. Destroying that propaganda pipeline, as Ukraine did in Stepnohirsk, has operational consequences that ripple well beyond one settlement in Zaporizhzhia. And there's one more dimension to this. Putin has recently reintroduced peace negotiation language, citing the Istanbul framework from earlier in the war. He's playing the negotiations card unprompted. That's rarely a sign of strength. The flag at Stepnohirsk was supposed to give Russia something to carry into any potential talks, a claim, however fabricated, of momentum and territorial presence. Ukraine denied him that, just as it has denied him leverage consistently across 2026. Russia's elite soldiers arrived in Stepnohirsk carrying their national flags and the weight of a leader's political needs. They left having given Ukraine's HUR one more documented, filmed, undeniable demonstration that even Russia's best-trained forces cannot overcome Ukrainian preparation, intelligence, and tactical execution. That's not luck. That's a military that has spent 4 years learning exactly how its opponent operates and building the capacity to shut it down before it even gets started. If you want to understand where this war is actually headed, watch our breakdown of what's happening to Russian forces in Crimea right now. The picture there tells you everything about which side holds the initiative in this conflict. Subscribe to Military Fox so you don't miss it. I'm Bradley Fox. This is Military Fox.